They ruined you on purpose, not by accident. Not because life is random and things just fall apart sometimes. No, somebody, somewhere, made a calculated move to knock you down, and then they sat back, arms crossed, waiting for the show. Waiting for you to stay down, waiting for you to cry about it on social media, beg for sympathy, burn every bridge you had left, and become the cautionary tale they always knew you'd be. That was the plan. That was always the plan. But here's the plot twist nobody saw coming, and I mean nobody. Not your ex, not your so-called friends, not the boss who tried to humiliate you in that meeting, not the family member who smiled in your face while stabbing you in the back. The plot twist is you. Because instead of staying broken, you're about to come back so cold, so calculated, so untouchable, that the same people who laughed at your fall are going to choke on their own arrogance when they see what you become. Machiavelli knew this 500 years ago. He knew that the world doesn't reward the soft, the sentimental, or the ones who wear their wounds like a costume for attention. The world bows to the ones who disappear, rebuild in silence, and return like a completely different animal. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because what I'm about to break down is going to change the way you think about every single person who thought they broke you for good. Welcome back to The Hidden Mind, the one channel on this platform that doesn't sugarcoat anything, doesn't hand you fluffy motivational nonsense, and doesn't pretend that being nice is the answer to every problem in your life. We deal in real strategy here. We deal in the cold, hard psychology of power, the kind that guys like Niccolo Machiavelli understood better than almost anybody who ever lived. If this is your first time pulling up to the channel, welcome to the family. You're exactly where you need to be, and trust me, you're gonna want to stick around because this content is about to rewire how you see betrayal, comebacks, and power itself. Before we dive in, I need you to do me a solid. Hit that like button right now, no cap. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this message. Drop a comment down below and tell me where you're watching this from. Or better yet, tell me who they are in your life. The person or the crowd that expected you to stay down. I read every single comment, and I promise you, you are not alone in this. If this message is hitting different, share it with somebody who needs to hear it, somebody who's going through it right now and thinks the game is over for them. And if you really want to ride with this channel and help us keep dropping content like this, consider hitting that super thanks button. It goes a long way, and it lets us keep this train moving. Oh, and obviously, subscribe. Turn on that bell. Because The Hidden Mind is just getting started, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's get into it. Chapter 1. The setup they never told you about. Here's the ugly truth about people. Most folks don't actually want to see you win. They want to see you almost win. They want to be close enough to your success to bask in it, but they never actually want you to surpass them, outshine them, or make them feel small by comparison. And when you start rising, when you start getting some momentum, some of these people, and I mean people close to you, not just random strangers, will do everything in their power to clip your wings before you can fly too high. Machiavelli talked about this dynamic constantly in his writing. He understood that human beings are driven by envy, self-interest, and fear way more than they're driven by loyalty or love. He wasn't being cynical for the sake of being edgy. He was being honest about something most people are too scared to admit out loud. People will smile in your face and plot your downfall in the same breath. That coworker who just wants to help, but somehow always finds a way to throw you under the bus in front of the boss, that's strategy, whether they're conscious of it or not. That friend who disappears when things are good for you, but shows up the second you're struggling, just to get a front row seat to your pain, that's strategy too. And the family member who never fails to bring up your failures at every single gathering, like clockwork, like it's their favorite hobby? Strategy, baby. Cold, calculated, and dressed up as concern. Now here's where it gets interesting. The people who set you up to fail, the people who wanted to watch you crumble, they made one massive miscalculation. They assumed you'd react the way most broken people react. They assumed you'd get loud. They assumed you'd start begging, pleading, explaining yourself to anybody who would listen, trying to convince the world that you're not what they said you were. They assumed you'd fall apart publicly, give them the satisfaction of watching your meltdown in real time, like it's some kind of reality show. That's the trap. That's the whole game. Because the moment you react with emotion, the moment you get defensive, loud, desperate, you hand them exactly what they wanted. You confirm their story. You become the broken character they already decided you were. Machiavelli would tell you, straight up, that the worst thing a leader can do is show his hand, show his wounds, show his weakness to the very people circling him like vultures. And that's exactly what happens when you let your emotions run the show after a betrayal. You basically hand your enemies a weapon and then thank them for using it on you. So what's the move instead? The move is silence. The move is disappearing from the narrative entirely. Not because you're hiding, not because you're scared, but because you understand something they don't. You understand that the most powerful comeback in history was never built on a stage in front of an audience. It was built in the shadows, in the quiet, in the grind that nobody sees. While they're out there spreading their little stories about you, talking behind your back, laughing about how you finally got what was coming to you, you're supposed to be somewhere completely different. You're supposed to be sharpening yourself, getting colder, getting smarter, getting more strategic with every single move you make. Because here's the thing about revenge. Real revenge, the kind that actually means something. It's never loud. It's never petty. It's never a viral clapback or a dramatic confrontation. Real revenge is your success. Real revenge is them watching you thrive from a distance, unable to say a single word about it, because you never gave them anything to use against you. Chapter 2. The Power of Silence. Let's talk about silence, because this is where most people mess up the comeback before it even starts. When you get hurt, when you get betrayed, when the whole world seems to be against you, your instinct is to talk, to explain, to defend yourself, to make sure everybody understands your side of the story. And look, I get it. That instinct is human. It's natural to want people to know the truth, to want your name cleared, to want justice in the court of public opinion. But here's the cold reality Machiavelli would drop on you if he was sitting across from you right now. Explaining yourself to people who already decided to hate you is like reading poetry to somebody who's already made up their mind to laugh at you. It doesn't matter how eloquent you are. It doesn't matter how true your words are. Their minds are closed, and your words are just going to become more material for them to twist and use against you later. Silence, on the other hand, is terrifying to people who expect a reaction. Think about it. When you go quiet after a betrayal, when you stop responding to the drama, stop engaging with the gossip, stop trying to defend your character to people who never deserved an explanation in the first place, you create a vacuum. And human beings hate vacuums. They hate not knowing what you're thinking. They hate not being able to predict your next move. Suddenly, the people who thought they had you all figured out start to panic a little bit, even if they won't admit it. They start wondering what you're up to. They start wondering if you actually don't care or if you're planning something. And that uncertainty, that little seed of doubt you plant just by staying quiet, is worth more than 1,000 arguments you could ever win out loud. Machiavelli lived in a world of shifting alliances, backstabbing nobles, and political chess games, where one wrong move could get you exiled or worse. And one of the biggest lessons from his life and his writing is that the person who reveals the least is the person who holds the most power in any room. Think about the most intimidating people you've ever encountered in your life. I promise you, it wasn't the loudest person in the room. It wasn't the person oversharing every single detail of their plans and their feelings. It was the person who stayed composed. The person who didn't need to explain themselves. The person whose silence made you feel like they knew something you didn't. That energy, that quiet confidence, that's not something you're born with necessarily. That's something you build, brick by brick, Every single time you choose silence over the temptation to defend yourself to people who don't deserve your energy. And listen, silence isn't the same thing as suppression. This isn't about bottling up your emotions and pretending you're fine when you're not. That's a recipe for burning out, and we're not about that on this channel. What we're talking about is strategic silence. Silence with a purpose. You can process your pain in private, with people who actually love you, with a journal, with a therapist, with whatever outlet works for you. But publicly, in front of the people who hurt you, who set you up, who wanted a front row seat to your breakdown, you give them nothing. You give them a locked door, and behind that locked door, you're building something they're never gonna see coming. Chapter 3: Cold Blood, Clear Mind. There's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot these days, cold-blooded, and usually it's used to describe somebody who's ruthless, somebody who doesn't feel anything, somebody who's basically a villain in everybody else's story. But that's a shallow understanding of what it actually means to have cold blood in the way Machiavelli intended it. Being cold-blooded doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It doesn't mean you're numb to betrayal, or that you don't cry behind closed doors, or that the people who hurt you didn't actually leave a mark. Being cold-blooded means that regardless of what you feel, you don't let that feeling dictate your actions in the moment. You separate emotion from strategy. You let yourself feel everything in private, and then you make decisions with a clear head, not a wounded heart. This is one of the hardest skills a human being can develop, and it's also one of the most powerful, because most people operate the exact opposite way. Most people let their emotions drive the car, and logic just sits in the back seat, occasionally yelling directions that nobody listens to. Somebody cuts them off in traffic, they react with road rage. Somebody disrespects them at work, they fire off an angry email they'll regret in 6 hours. Somebody breaks their heart, they post a cryptic message online hoping the person sees it and feels guilty. All of that is emotion in the driver's seat, and it always leads to worse outcomes than if logic had been steering the whole time. Machiavelli's whole philosophy was built around the idea that a ruler, a leader, anybody trying to hold on to power and dignity in a hostile world needs to master their emotions before they can master anything else. He talked about the importance of appearing calm even when the storm is raging inside you, because the moment your enemies see you rattled, they know exactly where to strike next. It's the same energy as a poker player who's got a terrible hand but keeps a straight face, because the second their face gives it away, they've already lost the round. Your face, your reactions, your public behavior after a betrayal, that's your poker face. And if you let it crack, if you let the world see just how shook you are, you're basically folding a hand you could have won if you just stayed composed a little bit longer. Here's how you actually build this skill, because I know some of you are thinking, easier said than done, and you're right. It is easier said than done, but it's not impossible. Start small. The next time somebody says something that stings, somebody tries to provoke you, somebody throws a little jab your way expecting a reaction, pause before you respond. Not for dramatic effect, but to actually give your brain time to catch up to your emotions. That 3-second pause is where all your power lives. In that pause, you get to choose. Do you react the way they expect, the way that confirms every story they've told about you? Or do you respond with something calm, calculated, maybe even a little bit of a smirk, that lets them know their little jab didn't land the way they hoped? Every single time you choose the second option, you're rewiring your nervous system to default to cold, calculated composure instead of emotional reactivity. And over time, that composure becomes your natural state. That's when people start calling you different. That's when people start saying, you got colder, you got harder to read, you got more intimidating without even raising your voice. Chapter 4: They underestimated the comeback. Let's talk about the most underrated weapon in your entire arsenal: being underestimated. When people knock you down, when they spread rumors, when they try to humiliate you publicly or privately, one thing almost always happens without fail. They lower their guard around you. They stop seeing you as a threat. In their minds, the story is already finished. You lost, they won. End of chapter, roll credits. And that assumption, that arrogant, lazy assumption that you're done, is the single greatest gift they could ever give you, even though they don't realize it. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the value of appearing weaker than you actually are, especially when you're rebuilding your position of power. He understood that a leader who's underestimated has way more room to maneuver than a leader who's constantly being watched and scrutinized. Think about every great comeback story in history, whether it's in politics, business, sports, or just regular life. The common thread is always the same. Everybody counted them out. Everybody moved on, assuming the story was over. And in that window, in that gap where nobody's watching closely anymore because they think they already know how it ends, that's exactly where the real work happens. That's the blind spot. That's your opportunity. So here's the mindset shift you need to make right now, today, before you finish watching this video. Stop trying to convince people you're not broken. Stop trying to prove them wrong in real time. Let them believe whatever fantasy makes them feel comfortable. Let them think you're struggling. Let them think you're still stuck in that dark place they left you in. Because every single day they spend believing that lie is a day you get to spend building in complete privacy, without their interference, without their sabotage, without their jealousy creeping back in to mess with your progress. This is chess, not checkers. And in chess, the most dangerous move is always the one your opponent didn't see coming because they were too busy admiring the move they thought already won them the game. There's a certain satisfaction, and I'm not gonna lie to you and pretend there isn't, in watching somebody's face when they realize they underestimated you completely. When the person who talked trash about your failure sees you thriving, glowing up, running circles around where they thought you'd end up, and they realize their arrogance blinded them to what you were actually capable of, that moment is priceless. But here's the catch, and this is crucial. You don't get that moment by chasing it. You don't get that moment by constantly trying to flex on people or prove them wrong out loud. You get that moment by simply doing the work, staying quiet, staying focused, and letting your results speak a language louder than any argument you could ever have with them directly. The flex isn't in the announcement. The flex is in the silence that comes right before they find out on their own. Chapter 5. Machiavelli's Law of the Return. There's a concept that runs through basically all of Machiavelli's work, whether he's talking about princes, republics, or just human nature in general. And it's this: power respects power, and weakness invites more weakness. In other words, the way you carry yourself after being knocked down determines whether people continue to test you or whether they learn to leave you alone. If you come back the same way you were before, same insecurities, same desperate need for approval, same willingness to let people walk over you, guess what happens? The same people, or people just like them, are gonna come right back around and do it all over again. Because you never actually changed the equation. You just healed the wound without addressing why you got wounded in the first place. But if you come back different, colder, sharper, more selective about who gets access to you, more strategic about what you share and with who, something shifts in how people approach you. They can feel it, even if they can't articulate what changed. There's a version of you that walks into a room and gets tested, gets pushed, gets disrespected, because people can sense there's an opening. And then there's a version of you that walks into that same room and people just naturally straighten up a little bit, choose their words more carefully, think twice before trying anything slick. That shift isn't magic. It's not some mystical energy thing, even though people love to call it that. It's the direct result of internal transformation showing up in your body language, your tone, your eye contact, your willingness to walk away from situations that don't serve you anymore. Machiavelli understood that respect in this world is rarely given freely out of the goodness of somebody's heart. Respect is usually earned through demonstrated strength, competence, and the ability to protect your own interests without needing to beg anybody for permission. This is why the comeback has to be an internal transformation first, before it's ever an external one. If you just change your circumstances, more money, a new job, a new relationship, without changing the actual person underneath all that, the same patterns are going to repeat themselves eventually. New scenery, same story. But if you do the deeper work, if you actually become somebody who doesn't tolerate disrespect, who doesn't chase people who don't value them, who doesn't need external validation to feel secure, then everything else, the success, the glow up, the respect from people who used to overlook you, all of that becomes a natural byproduct instead of something you're desperately chasing. Chapter 6. Building the New You in the Shadows. All right, let's get practical for a minute, because I don't want this to just be a bunch of motivational talk with no actual substance behind it. Let's talk about what the rebuild actually looks like day to day, because this is where most people get stuck. They understand the philosophy, they nod along with everything I just said, but then they go back to their regular life and nothing actually changes because they never built a system for the transformation. First thing, cut the audience. When you're rebuilding, you do not need spectators. You do not need people watching your every move, asking you for updates, checking in to see how you're holding up. Every time you share your process with somebody who isn't actively helping you build, you're leaking energy that should be going into the actual work. Machiavelli understood the danger of transparency in a hostile environment. He knew that revealing your plans before they're solidified gives your enemies, and sometimes even your so-called friends, time to prepare a countermove or, worse, time to talk you out of your own ambition through subtle discouragement disguised as concern. So the first move in the rebuild is going quiet. Not dramatically, not with some big announcement about how you're healing or focusing on yourself for everybody to see and comment on. Just quietly, gradually, start pulling back from people who don't need access to your process. Second thing, get obsessed with your own development. This is the part where you stop being a victim of what happened to you and start becoming a student of what it's going to take to never end up in that position again. Read the books. Watch the content, obviously. Keep watching this channel because we're going to keep giving you the tools. Learn a new skill. Invest in your body, your mind, your finances, whatever area got neglected while you were dealing with everybody else's chaos. This isn't about becoming obsessed with revenge, even though revenge might be a nice side effect. This is about becoming so consumed with your own growth that you literally don't have the time or energy to keep replaying what they did to you. Every hour you spend building is an hour you're not spending in your head, replaying the betrayal on a loop like some kind of sad highlight reel. Third thing, change your standards, not just your circumstances. This is huge, and it's the part people skip the most. If you get a glow up, if you get the new job, the new body, the new bank account, but you keep the same low standards for how people are allowed to treat you, you're going to attract the exact same energy that hurt you the first time, just with a different face. The real transformation is internal. It's deciding, with full conviction, that you are no longer available for disrespect, for half effort, for people who only show up when it's convenient for them. That decision, that raised standard, is what actually protects the new version of you from falling into the same traps. Fourth thing, let actions replace explanations completely. Every single time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to defend your choices, to make somebody understand why you're doing what you're doing, redirect that energy into just doing it instead. Machiavelli's entire approach to leadership was built on results, not intentions, not explanations, not good PR. A leader who has to constantly explain and justify their actions is a leader who's already losing control of the narrative. But a leader whose results speak for themselves doesn't need to say a single word, because the outcome does all the talking. You want people to understand what you're capable of? Don't tell them. Show them, quietly, consistently, until the evidence is so overwhelming that questioning it would just make them look foolish. Chapter 7. The Cold War Mindset. There's a difference between war and Cold War, and understanding that difference is going to change how you handle every conflict for the rest of your life. In a hot war, everything's loud, everything's emotional, everybody knows exactly what's happening because both sides are out here throwing punches in public. That's what most people do after a betrayal. They go to war publicly, dragging the other person's name through the mud, starting arguments, getting other people involved, turning their pain into a spectacle. And sure, it might feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely actually wins anything long-term. It just makes everybody involved look messy, and it gives the other person ammunition to paint you as the unstable one, the dramatic one, the one who can't let things go. A Cold War is different. A Cold War is quiet, strategic, and honestly, way more effective. In a Cold War, you don't announce your intentions. You don't confirm or deny anything. You simply continue existing in a way that makes your position stronger every single day, while the other side has no idea what you're planning because you've given them nothing to react to. Machiavelli was basically the godfather of Cold War strategy centuries before the actual Cold War ever happened between nations. He understood that the appearance of stability and strength, even when things are chaotic behind the scenes, is more valuable than any public display of aggression. Adopting a Cold War mindset after somebody hurts you means you stop treating every interaction with them like a battle you need to win in the moment. You play the long game instead. You let them think whatever they want to think. You don't correct their false narratives, because correcting them just proves you're still paying attention to what they think about you. You focus entirely on your own territory, your own growth, your own resources, and you let time do what time always does eventually. Reveal the truth without you having to lift a finger to prove it. People who operate from a Cold War mindset are rarely caught off guard, because they've already accepted that they can't control what other people say or think. All they can control is their own consistency, their own discipline, and their own silence. And here's something important. A Cold War mindset doesn't mean you're plotting revenge every waking moment, obsessing over how to get back at the people who wronged you. That's actually the opposite of what we're talking about. A true Cold War mindset means you've released the need for revenge entirely, because you understand that your success, your peace, your glow-up is revenge enough. The moment you stop needing them to suffer for you to feel okay is the moment you've actually won. Not because you're being the bigger person for some moral gold star, but because you've genuinely moved past needing their downfall to validate your own worth. Chapter 8. Turning Pain into Leverage. Nobody talks enough about how pain, when it's processed correctly, becomes one of the most valuable resources a person can have. Not pain that stays raw and unprocessed, festering into bitterness that poisons everything you touch. I'm talking about pain that gets transformed, refined, and used as fuel for a version of yourself that's sharper, wiser, and way harder to break the next time somebody tries. Think about it this way. Before the betrayal, before the setback, before whatever it was that knocked you down, you were operating with a certain level of naivety. Maybe you trusted too easily. Maybe you gave people the benefit of the doubt way more than they deserved. Maybe you were oblivious to the fact that some people are just fundamentally motivated by envy and self-interest, no matter how nice they seem on the surface. That naivety, while not your fault, was a vulnerability. And now, because of what happened, that vulnerability is gone. You see things clearer now. You read people faster now. You catch the red flags that used to fly right past you because you didn't know what to look for. That clarity, that upgraded perception, is a direct gift from the pain you went through, even though it obviously didn't feel like a gift while you were in it. Machiavelli would tell you that adversity is actually the training ground for anybody who wants real power and real influence. He didn't romanticize suffering for the sake of suffering, but he understood that a leader who's never faced real adversity is a leader who's untested, unprepared, and honestly, kind of soft, when real pressure eventually shows up, because it always does eventually. The people who set you up to fail actually did you an unintentional favor. They forced you into a training arc you probably never would have chosen for yourself, and now you get to decide what you do with that training. You can let it make you bitter, closed off, unable to trust anybody ever again, which honestly just continues the cycle of pain into other areas of your life. Or you can let it make you strategic, discerning, someone who trusts selectively instead of naively, who protects their energy fiercely instead of giving it away to anybody who asks nicely. This is the leverage piece. Every skill you develop from processing this pain correctly becomes a permanent upgrade to your character. The composure you built by not reacting emotionally, the discernment you built by learning to read people's true intentions, the discipline you built by choosing silence over explanation, over and over again until it became second nature. None of that goes away once the situation resolves itself. That becomes who you are now, and that's the real return on investment from going through something painful and coming out the other side intentionally, instead of just surviving it and hoping to forget it ever happened. Chapter 9. Becoming untouchable. There's a certain kind of person who walks through the world and just seems unbothered by chaos that would completely destabilize everybody else around them. People throw insults, and it barely registers. People try to provoke a reaction, and they just get met with a calm, almost amused expression, like the provocation was cute, but ultimately pointless. People spread rumors, and instead of scrambling to defend themselves, this person just continues living their life at the same pace, undisturbed, like the rumors are happening in a completely different universe that has no bearing on their reality. That's what becoming untouchable actually looks like. And I want to be clear, it's not about becoming heartless or emotionally numb. It's about building such a strong internal foundation that external chaos simply can't shake it anymore. Getting to untouchable status isn't an overnight thing, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend it is, just to make this video sound more inspiring. It's built through repetition. Every single time you choose not to react, every time you choose silence over explanation, every time you choose to keep building instead of getting distracted trying to prove somebody wrong, you're adding another brick to that foundation. And eventually, after enough bricks, after enough reps of choosing composure over chaos, the foundation just becomes who you are. You stop having to consciously choose calm in difficult moments, because calm has become your default operating system. Machiavelli's writing is basically a 500-year-old blueprint for exactly this kind of untouchable presence. He talked about the importance of a leader being feared and respected rather than desperately liked by everybody. Because the leader who needs everybody's approval is a leader who can be manipulated by anybody who understands how to withhold that approval as leverage. When you stop needing people's approval, when you stop needing them to see you a certain way, when you stop caring whether they think you're doing okay or falling apart, you become impossible to manipulate through social pressure. That's a massive amount of freedom that most people never get to experience because they're too busy managing everybody else's opinion of them instead of just living their actual life. And here's the beautiful irony in all of this. The more untouchable you become, the less people even try to test you in the first place, because on some subconscious level, they can sense there's nothing to gain from it. Predators, whether we're talking about literal predators in nature or the metaphorical kind you deal with in everyday life, are drawn to visible weakness and easy targets. They're not drawn to calm, composed, self-assured energy because there's no easy win available there. So, the safest place you can actually be, ironically, is in the version of yourself that doesn't need protecting anymore, because you've already built the armor from the inside out. Chapter 10. The Return. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. They expected you to stay broken. That was the entire plan, whether it was conscious or not on their part. They wanted a story where you fall and never get back up, where your downfall becomes a permanent chapter instead of just a temporary setback on a much longer journey. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend the fall didn't hurt, because it did. Real talk, betrayal cuts deep. No matter how strong you are, no matter how much of a Machiavellian mindset you try to adopt after the fact. But the fall was never the end of your story. It was just the setup for the part they never saw coming. The return isn't loud. It's not a dramatic confrontation where you finally get to say everything you've been holding back. It's not a viral moment where everybody who doubted you has to publicly eat their words. The return is quiet, and honestly, that's exactly what makes it so powerful. The return is you, showing up different, showing up colder, in the sense that you're no longer available for the same disrespect, sharper, in the sense that you see people's intentions way clearer now, and stronger, in the sense that nothing they could throw at you now would land the way it did before, because you already survived the worst of it and came out the other side completely transformed. Somewhere down the line, the people who expected you to stay broken are going to cross paths with the new version of you, whether that's in person, through mutual connections, or just seeing your life from a distance on social media. And in that moment, they're going to realize their arrogance blinded them to what you were actually capable of becoming. They're going to realize that every single thing they did to try to break you actually forged you into somebody they can no longer touch, no longer manipulate, no longer predict. And you're not even going to need to say anything about it, because your entire presence is going to say it for you. That's the Machiavellian comeback. That's the cold, calculated, silent revenge that actually means something, unlike the loud, petty, temporary satisfaction of a public clapback that fades in a day. Building yourself into somebody untouchable, somebody who doesn't need to explain, doesn't need to defend, doesn't need anybody's approval to know their own worth. That's a return that lasts a lifetime. All right, before we wrap up this one, let's do a quick recap so this actually sticks with you, instead of just being background noise you forget about in 10 minutes. Number 1, silence is a weapon. Use it wisely, instead of exhausting yourself trying to explain your story to people who already made up their minds. Number 2, master your emotions before you make any big moves, because reacting from a wounded place almost always leads to worse outcomes than responding from a clear, composed place. Number 3, let people underestimate you, because that underestimation gives you room to rebuild without interference. Number 4, the real comeback is internal first, external second. So do the deep work on yourself before you worry about the glow-up everybody else is going to see. Number 5, turn your pain into leverage instead of letting it turn into bitterness that follows you into every future relationship and opportunity. And number 6, aim for untouchable, not for revenge, because untouchable is a permanent state and revenge is just a temporary high that never actually fills the hole they left behind. If this video hit you differently today, if you felt like I was speaking directly to your situation, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. It seriously helps this channel grow and reach more people who need to hear exactly this message at exactly the right time in their life. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what part of this resonated with you the most, or share your own story if you're comfortable, because I promise you, somebody else reading the comments is going to feel a little less alone knowing they're not the only one going through a quiet comeback right now. Share this video with somebody in your life who's currently in their rebuilding phase, somebody who needs a reminder that the silence they're sitting in right now isn't weakness, it's strategy. And if you've been rocking with this channel for a while and you want to support what we're building here at The Hidden Mind, consider dropping a super thanks. It genuinely helps us keep producing content like this on a consistent basis, and we notice every single one of you who does it. Last thing, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, because we've got a whole lot more coming. More psychology, more strategy, more of the cold, hard truths that actually help you navigate this world, instead of just making you feel good for 5 minutes and then leaving you exactly where you started. Remember this, the people who expected you to stay broken are not owed an explanation, a reaction, or a single ounce of your energy. They are owed a front row seat to your comeback, whether they want it or not. Stay quiet, stay sharp, stay building. And when you finally do return so cold, so composed, and so completely transformed that they don't even recognize the person standing in front of them anymore. That's the move. That's always been the move. Until next time, this has been The Hidden Mind, and I'll see you in the next one.